Now that is some impressive scoring indeed, Andrew, and I'm really happy with this entry. Really excited to be taking a look at it. There are lots of little balance things and just kind of like um, blending things that I think we need to work on with this. And of course, it doesn't help that note performer's idea of what a mute sound is like is not really helpful, or it's just that's not realistic. Yeah, so we need to work out a few things at this score, but it is still really a great effort. And wow, just just like listening to like the past dozen scores to just to see the variety of just so many different ideas on how to realize this piece. It's just so great. That is what I live for this, and just to feel like some people are getting better with their orchestration, and anything I can do to help with that. That is really what it's all about. So let's jump straight back to here. Okay, so you're pretty specific about how you want your glockenspiel to sound: soft poly or rubber mallets. It's going to be a pretty soft attack. So like maybe when the music gets a little bit brighter, you might want to go to harder mallets. Okay, just so that things will come through as more than just an overtone, right? Let's get right here. This is going to sound more like an overtone, rather than like a note on its own. But maybe that's what you want. All right. Now here at the beginning, you are kind of telling the players, to bow into the crescendo and out again. Now, you do not have to mark it more than once or even at all, right? Because the players will make this work. Like it's such a small thing. Like it's such a from their perspective, it's really like putting training wheels on their bike to give them this kind of feedback on their bowing for something so small as and obvious as this. I would say that you should spend more time making sure that your phrasing is the same all the way through, right? Like there needs to be a slur right here, and I would say even here this should be bowed. This should be two separate bowings, right? Ba, da, right, as opposed to da, which is a little bit more difficult to manage smoothly. And then since you're going to be playing these notes twice in the low strings, then why not just have the entire section kind of agree in terms of its bowing and articulation? Okay, but having said that, I think the scoring here is still pretty good. I like the way that you really make sure that the string players know exactly what is meant by these like repetitions of crescendo marks, right? You don't leave it up to chance. Like you want a crescendo to mezzo piano, you want to drop from piano to mezzo forte, and then from mezzo piano to forte, and then mezzo forte to who knows, right? All right, and then you do the same thing backing out, right? And this is acceptable. Diminuendo to mezzo piano, mezzo forte diminuendo to piano. That's perfectly fine. So I actually like that. It's fiddly, but literally, haha. But it is still like better than just leaving them kind of blank and arbitrary. Up to 60 people to decide what it means, right? Or they'll all be paying attention to the concertmaster, hopefully. Okay, just a little bit of a whoosh here, soft mallets on your cymbal. Okay, now here I'm a little dubious about the piccolo. I mean, it is a cool touch to sort of start off on the lowest pitch and just kind of walk up and everything, but it's really like it is going to be so minuscule, right? The sound of a piccolo in its first 5 notes is so soft. It's just incredibly soft, and especially if you're coming in at pianissimo. So when you get to this mezzo forte here, you're making sure that it doesn't overplay the violin there. Do not worry about it, right? You get a slightly rosy note here with the way that you've got it scored. That's fine. I would say leave it where it is. It's all good, but just be aware that all you're doing is adding a little color to the top of this line. It really isn't. This isn't going to function in its own right, right? It's just a little bit. It's almost negligible, right? I mean, you would actually get more out of this if it were like first flute, and and the player was just really controlling what they did, which is very easy up to E above the staff sounding, right? So I would actually be more on the side of using flute rather than piccolo, but it'll be weaker. It'll be a weaker sound, kind of more folk flute than standard flute if you can hear it at all, right? And it'll have a. Anyways, I don't want to get into it too much, but all right, moving on. So just a little timpani stroke there, underlining pizzicato, bassoons, and this is lovely. You've got your little accompaniment from below on your winds, da da dum, and violas, da 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 dum, da 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 dum. Congratulations, you are one of the few, the proud, the orchestrators who orchestrated the melody to my liking here. All right, and then you just gave that top note, like the notes surrounding it, the harmony, to the flute, and that's really effective. So awesome work, and also something great for the violas to emote on, right? Da 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 da. And now here you're going to that funky straight mute sound. You do not have to say a duet. Just say, because we're just going to assume that it's mutes for both instruments, right? The only way that it would not be mutes for both instruments is if the top one, let's say that you wanted the top one to be muted and the bottom one to be open, right? So you would just indicate that in two separate voices, but you do not need to tell us that both players are using a mute. That is a given. All right. Here I would actually drop in some tenor clef to the trombones, at least for concert players, right? Now here, bone open. So I would say just learn some of your standard abbreviations. So tuba is TBA, period, right? Bass trombone is capital B period TRB period, B turb, right? And we are going to know that it is open, right? There's no relationship between these two fellows here, right? And it's a completely different passage. So the bass trombonist is not going to assume that they are muted just because the first and second had a nice little Highland fling here, right? So do not worry about telling them that they're open, right? So B turb, tb, and then B turb again, right? That's all fine. And you could even do this by let's see, I'm gonna call up my handy dandy keypad. Okay, I would say you could just do this. Get rid of tuba, make this, right? And then you don't have to mark anything, right? And then here, add second voice bar rests, boom, boom, right? See, you could just do it like that, and then we know, right? You don't have to write anything in, right? Just first voice and second voice. We'll assume that the bass trombone is the upper part and the tuba is the lower part. All right, so that is one way to just get around all of having to write anything in there at all, right? Okay, and unless you're going to use any other kind of mute, like if you're going to use cup mutes or like a wisp-tone or a Harmon mute or something like that, all you need to do is say consord. right? And then say senza sword, right? Everybody knows what that means. You don't have to worry about using English versus any other language or whatever, right? Everybody knows consort, senza sword. It just means adding a straight mute or taking one off. So that's the default, right? So unless you're going to use different mutes somewhere else in the piece, consort, right? Don't worry about st mute, which is actually would be more confusing to people in different languages of what a st mute was, right? So just like consort is good. All right, so back to the orchestration analysis. Pardon my digressions. All right, so the only thing that I would say about this really nicely orchestrated part right in here, including the viola, which I really like here, is do you really want slur? Da, da, ba, ba. Is that what you really want? Or, because remember, in the original score, there was mezzo staccato, right? Dun 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 dun, which has been interpreted by other orchestrators in a bunch of different ways, including portato and even tenuto staccato. All right, so just like, is that in the character? My voice keeps changing slightly because I'm sort of reaching over to look at the. Let me bring up that score again. Here we go. Yeah, so anyway, so just, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, hopefully you will want to get this score read by an orchestra if that's a possibility for you, if that's available at all. So, maybe think about the expression of the music, the meaning of the inflections and the articulation in that particular passage, right? Okay, bum 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 bum. So you're doubling, or you're having the piccolo be the top voice here. It's going to be pretty intense the way that this is scored. You can hear from the mock-up that it's a very bright sound, even though you've got horns underneath, which would tend to make it a little bit more solid and more kind of roundly ringing. But yeah, it's. So just be aware that the way that this is voiced, is voiced in the winds, is going to be very, very bright. Okay, and to add to that, the rooting it with trombone below and having horns play a little higher, that is all going to contribute to the kind of glittering, kind of hard glittering sound of this higher part right in here, right? So there are a couple of fixes that you might want to do here, and that is, one is just to balance between the parts, right? I like the idea of not going above mezzo forte if you have piccolo on top, right? So I would bring down the level of your brass to like mezzo piano, going down to pianissimo, right? And then you'll get a better balance there without so many weird overtones, and with the, I think it'll just be a more even tone all the way across. All right, and then just ending that cool little tuba note at the end. All right, and then this. It's interesting that this was actually interpreted by several orchestrators as a kind of a snarl, right? But like bass trombone will snarl on that note whether or not it's muted or stopped. And this is cool too. Unmuted trumpets, bum 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 bum, and it really does give a solid definition to the line. To have the trumpets just take over right here, and also right in here too. And once again, I would definitely bring down their volume, right? So if we're going with mezzo forte here, mezzo piano, da 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 da. Don't worry about the quality of the trumpet being questionable. You go for that high A. It's still going to. They'll just barely be able to control it down to a mezzo piano, but it's still, you still get a nice quality of tone in there, right? Okay, so da 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 da, strings and winds, nicely done. Yeah, just a lot of doubling up in here, like, I mean, it's all going to work fine with the strings to play in unison with these winds, but yeah, just a lot of kind of heavy. It's just kind of heavy scoring on this, so it's going to feel kind of Russian. That's something that happened from time to time with like Rimsky-Korsakov, and in his kind of school of thought. Now, ba da da dum da 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 dun 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 dun. This is all fine. This is another kind of failing of note performer. They're like, it got really scrubby right in here, like just really sounded like somebody scrubbing really hard on to try to get a stain out of a sink, with the vibrato, bit inelegant. Okay, and yeah, it's all fine in here. This is cool, and then I would actually make this this diminuendo a little start a little earlier, like right in the middle. I would say right at the beginning. Sorry, of this bar. In the middle of this note here, so they can start letting go, and then it's just a little bit more directed, so that when we get to this piano, it isn't just such a it isn't a case where the overwhelming resonance of the previous passage or the previous little phrase washes over into the softer part and kind of takes away from the clarity of how it starts, right? So, in other words, just like, if somebody yelled at you and then whispered, then it would be hard to make out the whisper, right? So it's the same thing. So just like bring the yell down sooner, and then we can hear the whisper better. Okay, and this is all fine right in here. Glockenspiel and the horns. I like this. Once again, though, for a really good blend, horns should be pianissimo. Now da 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 dum bum. This is nice. How about instead of a cesura, a pausa, right? Like put in a little comma, so like they take a breath. So it's da 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 da. Whichever note you want to think of, right? And it's kind of cool to have these soft notes in here. Just be aware, a pianissimo on a high A is really, kind of asking a lot from your first trumpet player. It's just a bear to play right in there, just to try to get that down. I mean, soft and high is just really difficult for a lot of players. So, and actually, right in here, I would give this to the first, not the second horn player, right? Just because they have a better ability to control that, right? Otherwise, really nice. This really a roaring kind of line right in here. It's kind of strange, though, that like you choose to jump up to 2 octaves here, sort of a triple octave here in your flutes and piccolo, and you're keeping your violins like sort of suppressed down here, where they'll get stomped all over by the trumpets. So, is there maybe something that you can do here to help the strings help the winds, right? Or to help them moderate the kind of cutting edge here, right? There will still be the essence of string tone here, but it's really not going to follow the arc of the line, right? So it's just kind of, and of course, like if you go all the way up to this way high A flat on piccolo, then that note is going to hurt. Okay, it's going to really cut at the ear, right? There's a almost percussive quality to high piccolo notes. It's just almost like somebody trying to squeeze a children's block into your ear, right? So just be careful it's really going to shriek. It's going to just really be powerful. So, what if you just dropped the piccolo an octave, had it come in here, and doubled everything with strings? Like just try that out. Like, go back to your score, just make a copy and then try that out. Just like cut the first 3 notes, come in an octave lower, just stay an octave lower, and at this point have the strings go to octaves, and just see how much that tempers the arc of this melody. because you've already got the strength here. You've already got the overtones, just really brilliant overtones from such high trumpet playing, right? They are, in essence, doing all the work that the piccolo is doing right in here, right? And this is just sort of accentuating and kind of sitting on it, right? Anyway, just some things for you to think about. Now, on the next page, bum 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 bum, we're going back to the restatement. Da 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 bum 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 bum. I really like this, by the way. Um, the clarinet playing in octaves with the piccolo, that's kind of fun. It's be aware it's gonna once again, like once the piccolo gets to these really high notes, it's things are gonna go cubical on you, in terms of the sound of those very high notes. But still, I mean, right, up to about right here, it's going to sound really just gorgeous and just very clean and clear and coming through fine, right? And I really love these like anticipatory notes. That's a genius idea, combining pizzicato of cello with staccato. I guess this is trombone, and sort of a push by the first bassoon. So that is really, really cool. It just really helps to set up the downbeat. Yeah. And this is all good too. This stuff right in here. I would actually notate this like this. Okay? Right? If this is what you intend, right? The divisi, right? And then, I mean, if it really is a true divisi, let's go back to the keypad. That should be second voice. And you should also put a second voice on this right here, right? Hang on. So turn this into a tie. Sorry. Turn this into a tie. Get rid of that. I know I'm kind of doing a bunch of roundabout stuff. All right, so that's the way to notate that. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, here, see, we're back to mute, right? Mute, open, mute, open. So all you need is just consort, sensosword, consort, sensosword. Everybody in any language will know that, will know what that is. I've had scores played in Russia, and they read all of the Italian terms over there with no problem, and even some some English ones as well, and of course like all the German and French too. So yeah, triangle. I think that you could have just had separate lines for your percussion. Had a separate line for the triangle, separate line for the for your cymbals and everything else, and just had standard notation, standard note heads for all of your different. Because I think like that's something that comes and goes. I think most percussionists are happy just to get just to have standard note heads on really clearly defined parts rather than jumping back and forth between them, right? Assume that you have 3 percussionists available when you undertake this score, and you don't have to worry about it, all right? Okay. Yeah, so this has got to be reversed. It doesn't matter. So here, swap. Hang on, there were too many voices there. Okay, so this should be, let's do that again. I see what's going on. Right, so be they ever so far away from each other, it's got to be like this. Okay. Okay, so let's get on to and this is fine. I don't have a big problem with this. Just being mindful that it's very hard to play softly, way, way, way up high like that for your flutes and clarinet. So let's get into bum 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 blum 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 blum. So you basically give it to the glockenspiel to do everything, all right, which is cool. But you also have this non-vibrato, sort of intersecting, falling parts with your strings, and that is such a cool idea, right? I almost wish that there was like some option of like different kinds of chimes, like like if you did it with glockenspiel and then celesta and then antique cymbals, and then maybe a combination of glockenspiel and celesta at the end. It might have been kind of cool to just vary these, but you're trying not to. It's like less about the glockenspiel than it is really about the strings here. Okay, so if there is any big problem here, and that is just really kind of the balance between certain elements. Like for instance, right in here, this is all lovely, except for the fact that like everything is the same dynamic, and this is a point at which if you're going to have such a weak instrument as piccolo playing in its first octave against muted and open brass, horns and so on, and like thicker textures, then you just it has to come out more, right? You could hear in the mock-up that you barely hear the melody here, right? And what if everybody did not like crescendo here except for the melody, right? What if the crescendo was just for the melody? What if the melody just like compensating here for the fact that the piccolo is so soft? What if it was like coming in at mezzo forte, or what if everybody else was pianissimo and the piccolo and the clarinet were piano crescendo, right? There just needs to be more of a balancing act right in here. And then here we've got the problem of balance between like these flaring wind and brass parts, and then these really soft rose petals falling. It's just the ear doesn't have time to recover in order to hear like these little petals falling, right? So I think what you need to do is just not take the piano part so literally in having every single one of these be pianissimo, number one, and then number two, just make sure that you have destination dynamics that bring the level of the dynamic way, way down so that when this comes back in, it is heard clearly, right? So, mezzo forte crescendo, go for it, but have a destination dynamic of pianissimo coming out of it, right? So that these pedals can fall over it and be heard very beautifully, right? Very easily. And especially right in here, it's very useful to have two separate lines for your dynamics, and just a standard note head for your triangle is all good. Okay, just so that we can look over here and we can say, oh, that's triangle, that's cymbal, that's tam-tam, that's bass drum, whatever. All right. And then here, if you really want to notate long pitches for timpani, you kind of have to say sostenuto, right? That's just my philosophy there. So that it just clarifies for the timpanist that you want a longer sound, and you're not relying on the hall itself to sort of speak the note longer. Now, timpanists, like as you can read in my book, 100 More Orchestration Tips, they just really like absolute perfect clarity on everything, and they want the most information they can get from you, even if that is somewhat wrong or non-percussionist like, or subjective in its description. All the same, So I would just say like P SOS, SOS period, right? And so that just that lets the timpanist know that there's going to be a certain style of sustained pitch down there. Okay, and then you're just kind of keeping with double basses on these low notes, and also tuba, and that's all cool. Like people might look at this and say, "Oh, why don't you put a ottava bassa under that?" And you just totally don't need to. Tuba players know what a low C looks like, okay? Because they read them all the time. That is fine. And of course, you don't have to indicate which tuba. Like that's another one of my tips. Just write the low C and don't worry about it, and they will bring their double C to the gig. Okay, so they might actually bring two tubas or even three, depending on the music. Okay, so this is all good. I like this. I like the idea of unmuted brass, like on this part right in here. Yeah, so just make sure, like this is all nice. I really like the way that the timbre changes as you go forward, right? And this, like the building of urgency here, that's really, really great. Yeah, if there was ever a desperate need for a tenor clef, it would be right here, right? So let's do that. Just drop in a tenor clef, actually just from right here, right? And it's just so much more readable. Okay, and then we have our final part right here. Now, once again, we need to talk about balance. Now, you could also hear that the melody was extremely unclear in the mock-up, and that is actually true. It really will be unclear with the way that this is scored. So, there's nothing wrong with you just like scoring the melody at piano and everybody else at pianissimo. That's the only real fix that you need there, right? And then the same thing here, like these little da 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 da. That is, I mean, it's just amazing how much you get away with without having a harp here, right? That's I think that's terrific. So I mean, just being aware that the muted sound of horns and trumpets, like it's like, when you play it really soft, there's that really far away sound, but the quality of it is just very it's very trebly, right? It will contribute to the high frequencies in all of these lovely harmonics and upper winds, right? So it is going to be just kind of have a sort of a slightly brittle quality to it. This is kind of interesting how you kind of you just jump over to one here, like you drop the bottom one, and yeah, I mean, I see what you're trying to do, sort of save vertical space here, but yeah. I would almost prefer doing two separate voices here if there's going to be a dropout of voices. That would be my approach here, even though you end up with notes that stick up, right? Something like this. If I just, oh man. Okay, well, look, I'll get into that some other time. Okay, so so I think this is a really cool score. Just really enjoyed looking at it, and man, some terrific ideas and some great craft being used here. And Andrew, like your participation with this challenge is just really extremely well appreciated. I think you were sort of wondering whether or not you should do it, and we talked about it a little bit online, and then you decided to jump in. If I recall right, if I don't, pardon me for that. And I'm just really glad you decided to do it in the end, because this is really an excellent score, and it gives me ideas and makes me think harder as a coach. And just looking at all the different possibilities, this is really just a lovely original way of dealing with the whole problem of how do we have that cascade of cherry blossoms or whatever it is. So just hugely enjoyable. So thanks so much for this great entry and for supporting on Patreon. That's just I really just can't thank you enough. And, I really would love to hear your thoughts on some of the other evaluations, or the other scores that have been evaluated by me that are on the Patreon feed or just on the YouTube comments or on Facebook if you like. It would be really great to hear your thoughts on their scores too, all right? So thanks again. This is really, really great. And, I'm just really feeling my oats here. So I think I'm going to do a 5th of these long evaluations today. Thanks so much, everybody. This was just thrilling. It was so exciting. And on to my 5th and last evaluation for today. It's so exciting. I'll see you guys soon.